This Week in Radio Tech, episode 190, is brought to you by the Telos line of phone hybrids, talk show systems, and audio codecs. Practical tips and ideas are on the Telos Tech blog at telosalliance.com.
And now, our feature presentation.
Twert.
What kind of engineer travels to Africa and plants antennas on the beaches of Mozambique? Or brings the sheriff to a competitor's transmitter site?
All right, calm down. He says that to everyone.
This calls for immediate discussion.
What's up, Doc?
All your days are belong to us.
From his palatial office of important business,
or in a choice hotel in a distant land,
this is Kirk Harnack.
Charlie Wooten from Panama City, Florida, joins Chris Tobin and me for a War Stories episode in the trenches and on the beach.
You're dialed in to This Week in Radio Tech.
Hey, and welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host, and I'm so glad you've joined us for this show. We have a great time talking about radio technology. We're a bunch of engineers, IT guys. I'm still doing engineering, even though I guess I'm still part owner of some radio stations, and we have one of our co-hosts, one of our regular co-hosts, is with us for this show. I always introduce him as the best dressed engineer in radio from Manhattan, New York. It's Chris Tobin. Hey, Chris, welcome in.
Hello, Kirk. Thank you. Yeah, it's good times here in Manhattan. It's getting cold. Winter is coming back again.
Oh my gosh,
nice
it's yeah. Pumpkin ale. Well,
I have to make full disclosure. I'm not at the GFQ HQ TOC, so as a result, when the show comes to a conclusion, I will not be enjoying a nice bar-side chat with several people.
Now, we were complaining earlier that your audio was too loud, and now it sounds like it's downward expanded too much, because when you get quiet, it gets quiet.
Downward expanded? Oh.
That's what it sounds like. I'm an engineer. I'm supposed to know these things.
Must be that gating system.
But I could be wrong. And I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not in my usual cozy home studio. I'm in Cleveland in the Telos Alliance Training Center. And I put the camera over here and in front of the Telos Racco gear. And so that's where I'm coming to you from. And it's cold and windy and a little bit rainy here in Cleveland. So I'm enjoying a beverage of hot cocoa that I found down in the employee break room. So that's what I'm having. This is a War Stories episode where we every 10th episode we try to we bring a guest on who has who's been there. He's been in the foxholes and in the trenches. He's got dirt under his fingernails, and he's prepared to tell us about some interesting things, tough times to go through, challenges to overcome, and maybe we'll get a teachable moment out of some of these tough times and in the trenches stories. Today, he's been on the show before, but not for a while. I want to welcome in from Panama City, Florida, the Director of Engineering for Clear Channel in Panama. It's Charlie Wooten. Hey, Charles, welcome in to This Week in Radio Tech.
Thank you. I just cleaned my fingernails, so we're ready to go.
That's good. It's just an expression.
I understand.
So, hey, our show is brought to you by Telos Systems, my employer, for full disclosure. So I really like their stuff, and they really give me a paycheck every now and then. So I just appreciate the heck out of that. We'll talk about a couple of cool things from Telos here during our break. Hey, a couple of notes here. I was monitoring the GFQ network, our home network, where we broadcast from, and the previous show that was playing was What the Tech with Paul Thurrott. And it's always interesting. And Andrew Azarian and Paul have a great time chatting about all things Windows and other operating systems. But Paul was dissing the Chromebook. And look what I got here. I got this in the last week or so, this Chromebook. And I got to tell you, for the need that I had, which is, okay, I've got this MacBook Pro. And it's powerful, it's bright, display looks great, but it's kind of heavy. And I have so many things connected to it on my desk that if I want to just grab it and bring it upstairs and have it as a second screen while I'm watching TV, that's just not a good choice. It's heavy, it's bulky, and it's got 4 plugs in it usually. Well, the Chromebook, it's like instant on, and the battery life doesn't appear to be great, but it doesn't need to be. It charges with a little micro USB connector. Let me see if you can see that there. There you go, micro USB for power, for charging it, 2 USB ports and an audio port, as so many of them have. No HDMI port, no wired Ethernet port, no VGA port like some other Chromebooks have. That's it. But it's lightweight and it's almost instant on. Now, I heard Andrew talking about TeamViewer on a Chrome OS. So I'm team viewed. Here we go. Sorry about that. I am team viewed into a computer back at the Harnack Ranch, and it's running multi-ping to a bunch of different sites. Kind of interesting to watch that over 24 hours to see ping times go up substantially in the evening when everybody's watching Netflix. So anyway, that's my Chromebook. Andrew, if you want to pop your mic on and tell me what you think, is that sexy enough for you?
No, I think it's a cute little device. On the show, we were talking about how I don't consider it a PC replacement yet.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
And the discussion, pretty much, the argument was over people that are saying, well, no, this is a PC replacement. You could replace your computer with this. If you're not doing a lot of stuff on a computer, you could just get rid of it and get this. But my point was, well, if it wasn't $280 and let's say it was $380, would you be saying that? And most people have said, no, we wouldn't be saying that.
The company I work for, Telos, we have moved into the world of Google, Gmail and Google Docs and Google Calendars and all that, and it's working better for us than any other groupware solution has ever worked so far. So I guess that's a compliment. And I've been in the Gmail, Google Docs world for quite some time, and I just haven't looked back. I really, really like it. And so if you're in that world, this just gets you right in there. You can install apps that run, but I don't know all about how they run. If they're in a browser, it's not an obvious browser window that they're running in, but I guess some things are, some things aren't. But what I like about this is, we've got 4 or 5 tablets at our house, and they're great for consuming. But if you want to type an email, okay, yes, I do have a keyboard for one of my iPads, but it's not attached. You have to hold it at the right angle so the iPad fits in it. And if you put it at a different angle, the iPad will fall out of it. And so this, you just toss it on your lap and you can do stuff.
Kirk, let me ask you this. Could you use, when you go away, I mean, right now you're away, but can you use that exclusively and not bring your MacBook?
I brought the MacBook because today I gave a presentation at the Ohio Broadcasters meeting in Columbus, and this doesn't have. Now you can use Chromecast with this, but this doesn't have convenient VGA out. There are plenty of other Chromebook models that do have HDMI and/or VGA outputs and wired Ethernet. So I wanted the lightest one that I could get, and that was this one. And although I didn't want the Asus, that just seemed really plasticky and flimsy. I mean, all of this is plastic and flimsy. It somehow seems better. I tell you what, though, I've taken this on a couple of airplane flights now and used it instead of the MacBook, and with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Now, if you got trouble getting around Wi-Fi, this ain't for you. You gotta have a Wi-Fi connection for this to work. So, my T-Mobile phone oftentimes is the best internet connection that I have, and oftentimes I'm getting 12 megs down and 3 megs, 4 megs up, using it as a hotspot. So that works well. I've also got a Verizon card with a cradle point, and that depending on where I am, seems like the T-Mobile works well and the Verizon doesn't, or vice versa. The Wi-Fi in the Southwest plane really is too slow to support much in the way of video, but for doing emails, it works just fine. And if you're in the Google world, your attachments are probably not even on your computer. They're probably living in Google Docs, or you're just forwarding an attachment from somebody else, and it never has to download to your computer and re-download back up. So if you're in that world, this works well. I also like the fact that, look, I'm a busy man. I don't have a lot of time to be waiting on the computer to boot up. So, when you open it up, voila, there it is. It's. I realized it was just asleep just then. But as far as booting, it doesn't take much time at all. I haven't timed it with a timer, but it doesn't take much time at all. So I like it. Not as a primary computer yet, but I do. If for a lot of folks it would be fine. For my mom, it would be just great for the primary computer. For my daughter in high school, it would work for her as a primary computer. So there you go. Opinions?
I like it. Here are the cons for me. 16 gigs of hard drive. That's it. You got 16 gigs of storage on that thing.
Got 100 gigs at Google.
100 gigs at Google. Yeah. So I mean, if you're disconnected, you only get 16. But the good news is they're coming up with Haswell chipsets for that thing, and it should be here within the next couple of weeks. So you're going to get some, powerful computers that are going to be running this thing.
with still good battery life, and not that this has good battery life.
Oh, better. It should be better because the Haswell chipsets handle the battery life much better.
Okay.
So we'll see.
All right. Well, cool. Chris Tobin, you played with this yet?
I haven't played with one in a while, but I'm just thinking about the concept, and I don't know. A lot of folks that I know and talk to, they still like the idea of having something in control.
Now, if you asked me to change 2.5 years ago, I was in the world of Outlook. I was running a virtual machine on my Mac that ran Windows just so I could run Outlook. I tried the Mac version of Outlook, and it didn't integrate with the calendar, and it was just disastrous for me. And so 2.5 years ago, I would have said, no, there's no way that a Chromebook would work. But I made the jump away from Outlook, away from a mail client that resided on my computer, and totally into the world of just browser Gmail. And as computers are fast enough, and as internet connections are reasonably fast, I just don't notice lag anymore. If I click on an email and bam, it's up. Okay, it may be a few milliseconds slower than if it's on an app on your computer, but man, it's plenty fast enough for me. So I like. If somebody said that's your only computer, deal with it. I could, except for video and perhaps if I wanted instant picture storage, they'd all be up in the cloud, and not so many of them would be on the computer. Charlie,
if you're somebody, I'm sorry, if you're somebody who breaks away from the traditional, as you point out, Outlook and call it the Microsoft Garden, Velvet Rope Garden, you should be able to manage. But then, as you point out, also if you don't have Wi-Fi and you're somewhere and you're accustomed to some access some way, you may find it difficult. But yeah, I could see if you change your complete ecosystem, you could probably make it work and do very well with it. If you try to be a hybrid between the two, I can't. I see frustration.
I think about my 17-year-old daughter has always, since she was 13 years old, 12 years old, has lived around Wi-Fi. It's never not been part of her world. So they have Wi-Fi at school. We have Wi-Fi at the house, and it's there. And so she's always used to that. As we grew up, all of us old folks, we grew up in way before. Before the internet. So we're we want to latch on to having stuff on our computer. I get that. I'm still that way too. I've got 300 gigs worth of stuff in SSD on this MacBook Pro. So not totally there yet. And if you want to do things like edit files, and I was making a Prezi presentation, although come to think of it, I was just thinking, with Prezi, which is what I typically use for presentations, they have ways to add images to a Prezi, and the default way to do it is to do a Google search for images and add them. And you can tell it to search only for commercially licensed images too. So it seems like moving that way, and if you want to do it, from a practical point of view, you probably can.
Hey, Kirk, iPad or this for someone that's not really tech savvy and they just want to get into this?
Boy, that's a great question. The only thing I don't like about that's not the only thing. I'm just so in the Google world that using Mac products with Google doesn't always shuck and jive real well. There's not good. Especially when they brought out Mavericks here, it apparently broke a lot of stuff about Gmail because Gmail's not standard IMAP, and there's some problems there. That's hard to say. That's hard. If you got to type a lot, I'm not liking a tablet. I know there's keyboards, but again, the fit and finish between a keyboard, this is a laptop, and it's a small one, but the keyboard's right there. It sits in the same place, and relative to the screen, and so it's easy to type emails on it. And it does, of course, it's got a camera and a mic, and it does Hangouts just fine. I guess it doesn't do Skype, does it? Because there's not a Skype client for this, and I haven't learned about hacking it yet to install other Linux apps on it, or if that can work well. Maybe somebody in the chat room knows about that. I was not confident in installing TeamViewer on it, so the TeamViewer that you are seeing here on my screen, that is their web app. That's their website running it, which apparently they don't like. They try to discourage you from doing that, but that's what it is. Charlie, you have any experience with these oddball little computers?
I haven't made the jump yet. I'm still the old-fashioned laptop guy right now. I will probably get a tablet here very soon. Probably an iPad. but I have not made the jump yet.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now speaking of, one reason I bought that little tablet was second screen for watching TV, but also to travel. When you pull out your 15-inch iPad and the guy in front of you leans a seat back, it's just useless. Well, at least in the economy class, it's useless. But the little Chromebook was great. Now, Charlie, you've been doing some travel here lately. I think you've been out of the country at least twice in the last few months. This is a war story show. I guess we should get right to it. And we can talk plenty about ham radio too. So tell us about your adventures here lately.
Well, about 3 weeks ago, I left and went to Mozambique, and was there with a group of 14 other hams, and we did what's called a de-expedition. And I don't know if Andrew can bring up the website and show the graphic, but the call sign was C82DX, Charlie 82 Delta X-ray. It's www.c82dx.com. But there's a picture right on the front page there, Andrew, you can show probably. It's a group picture of all of us standing on the beach on the Indian Ocean. At some point we used mainly vertical antennas and made about 27,000 contacts.
Oh my goodness. Over how long a period?
It was about 10 days. About 10 days. We had some horrendous static down there. Those African thunderstorms are amazing as far as the amount of noise they generate on the lower bands. But we had a great time, and it was interesting. It's Mozambique is truly a third world country in many ways, complete with the women with the stuff on their head, walking around. It's amazing to watch them because they balance it. They don't even put their hand up there to hold it. They just walk around with this big package of whatever it is up there, wood sticks or whatever.
And people pay good money here to go to finishing school, or they used to walk gracefully. And I guess you've got to walk gracefully to carry a big bowl on your head.
I would, some of those packages had to weigh couple of hundred, well, not a couple hundred pounds, but at least 75, 80 pounds. Looking at the stuff they were carrying. I don't know why they don't have neck pain.
Wow.
But we had ICOM radios. Ray Novak, who I think N9JA, who's the representative for ICOM America, went along on the trip, and we were furnished with 4 ICOM 7600 transceivers. We used stepper RR verticals. We had a 160 meter vertical antenna, which was 65 feet tall. It was made out of titanium, and you should see what we had. Some high winds when we were there. One night it got up to about 55 or 60 miles an hour, and it was still going the next morning early. And we were able to take a picture, and that the vertical was laying over like this, but as soon as the wind went, it went right straight back up because of the titanium. It doesn't give. Does
this thing assemble in pieces? I mean, surely you can't carry 65-foot long piece of titanium.
Yeah, it's in 15-foot sections, and tapers down. But it's an amazing antenna when you see the high wind hit it.
Well, it's better than breaking, I suppose. Or
the titanium, it's not going to break. It's just going to bend, and then it's got memory, and it comes right back to where it was.
How do you secure that to the ground? What's the base look like?
We have it's almost like an AM broadcast antenna. We put about 16 radials out, about 100 feet long, and it's got a little tuning, a T network at the base to tune it, and very, very, very much like an AM broadcast a network for an AM tower. And we just use Dacron rope for the guy wires, so they're non-conductive.
Huh.
And it works out very well.
So is it sitting on an insulator? It's sitting
on it's sitting on an insulator. It's like a series fed antenna. Yeah.
Okay.
And we
Amazing.
We tune it up and go for it.
How much power would you run into that?
A kilowatt.
Kilowatt.
Yeah. And now you got to remember, think about this. 160 meters is at 1.8 megahertz. That's just above the AM broadcast band.
Right.
We worked stations on 160 meters from Mozambique at our sunrise in California, in the East Coast of the United States, all over. And during the night, I was working Europe and places like Malaysia and India and places like that when it was nighttime there. And at our sunset in the afternoon, which was darkness to the east of us, the very first contacts that we made were Hawaii, of all things, because we were in the darkness path of their sunrise. So we first contacts that were made actually on 160 meters were Hawaiian stations on and they were like 4 stations right in a row, and then they were gone. I mean, it's just while you have the what's called the gray line as it moves across the earth.
Wow.
But
I'm looking at
I mean, just imagine basically AM broadcast band and working that kind of distance.
I wasn't really sure where Mozambique is, and there it is on the southeast portion of Africa, the continent of Africa. Right out from that across the Indian Ocean is Madagascar.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you're a Disney fan, you've heard of Madagascar. So there it is. A pretty big island too. My goodness, it's as big as a good part of the U.S. Several states big, and a lot of folks from Europe who are well off. Favorite place to vacation, Mauritius is not far from there too.
Oh yeah,
so.
Mauritius is right off, right out there in the pond, not far off the coast. There were a number of hotels that were abandoned in Mozambique because there had been a revolution, overtake of the government back in the early 90s, and there were several very nice hotels that were completely abandoned and beaten up. There were holes in them, and where they had. But the Europeans used to go there, and it's just beginning to come back now.
Tell me about the infrastructure in Mozambique as far as electricity and internet and phone. What did you find there?
Well, I got two interesting stories there. First of all, let's talk about internet. We arranged, and I don't want to go into the details exactly, but there is a ham in South Africa who works for one of the cellular companies, one of the large cellular companies that serves both South Africa and Mozambique. And in his travels, he has to go and service the facilities, the RF facilities and the switches and whatnot in Mozambique. And I'll tell you what, if people may not have anything to eat there, but they're damn sure going to have a cell phone. I have never seen so many cell phones in my life.
Really?
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. But now, where we were it was a resort city called Xai-Xai, spelled Xia, but you say it Xai-Xai. There was no internet or connectivity except traditional voice cell phone. Where we were, the cell site that covered where we were, there was no internet. When you went into the city about 10 miles away, you got 3G. But where we were, there was none. Well, this ham who worked for the cell company patched a few things around, and we had internet over that cell site for the duration of the time we were there. And then when we left, he pulled it off. But we did have internet. My iPhone worked there perfectly. And one Sunday morning, or the Sunday morning that we were there, 6 o'clock straight up, the power goes out. It's one of those OS moments, and so we do a little investigation, and about 3 hours later, the power magically comes back on. Well, we come to find out that the power company cuts the power off every Sunday morning so they can work on things. That's what they do. And if we'd have known that, we'd have made arrangements for a generator. But that's when they just drop the power, and that way they can safely. And they don't have bucket trucks. They do not have bucket trucks. They climb the poles. They got spikes and do it old school. And so that's when they do their work on the poles, when they have to make changes and change insulators or changes in their transmission system or whatever. That's when they do it, is on Sunday morning between about 6 and 10 or 11 o'clock, and then it magically comes back on.
And this, since they have the power off, they can go work anywhere on the poles as well as at the generating plants.
They could. I think they take the generators down, but they certainly go offline off the grid. I think their power actually comes from South Africa, from some of the nuclear plants they have in South Africa, because there's huge transmission lines that come from South Africa that come into Mozambique. But I have an idea that most of the power is generated down there, and they bring it up a couple of 100 miles up into Mozambique. But that was interesting, and we were trying to figure out what was going wrong, and people said, "Oh, you didn't know they take the power off every Sunday morning?"
It's a normal thing.
Yeah. It's like, what's the big deal?
So
well, we're trying to make contacts on the radio.
What do citizens of Mozambique? What do they speak for language?
It's Portuguese, because it used to be a Portuguese colony. Of course, there are there's some other African dialects there, but most everybody speaks Portuguese, and there's a little, people who speak English can get along there quite well.
So enough people do speak are bilingual or trilingual to.
Yeah. And we had a couple of hams from South Africa who were on the trip, and they of course speak Afrikaans, and some of the people there spoke Afrikaans as well. So we didn't have any problem with communications as far as verbal communications is concerned. It was we were careful about the water. We were careful about what we ate, and we actually had a person that went with us to do the cooking. So that person's sole purpose was to do the cooking for us. So we had somebody who took care of that. They weren't a ham, but they were hired to come with us strictly as a cook.
That's amazing. I want to know more about how you organize one of these de-expeditions, but I'm also curious about some of the technical aspects of operating like that. And I certainly I get things like hooking up 2-meter antennas and frequencies where the antenna is a manageable size. But I'm so interested in understanding better things like how you tune into a vertical, especially if you're going to be moving around in frequency. You said you had a tuning network at the base of this titanium whip antenna. Was it in any way automatic, or did you have to go manually tune it up on a given frequency?
Well, we were only operating on one particular frequency on 160 meters. Now, we could move probably 10 or 20 kilohertz without touching it, and the SWR would be probably less than 1.5 to 1. But the other verticals that we were using were made by a company called Step IR, and it's actually a motorized tape that runs up and down in a fiberglass tube, and you just tune it. You just move the length of the tape with a motor, and it automatically goes to the correct frequency and length that it needs to be. So what
frequency bands are those for typically?
Oh, we had them. The ones that we had would run anywhere from 80 to 10 meters.
Oh,
and
okay.
They were tall, and they were full size verticals on 40 through 10, and then on 80 meters there was an additional loading coil that was used to make the coverage go down to 80 meters. But and then we had one beam antenna, what's called a hex beam. We had for operating too, and we had
what's your rule of thumb? What's your rule of thumb for deciding, am I going to use the beam or am I going to use a vertical that's on the same frequency, on the same band?
Well, we had what was called the CW shack, and we had the sideband shack. We rented these. They called them villas, but I wouldn't call them villas, and you wouldn't call them villas. You'd call them a concrete shack with with a very marginal bathroom in them. But we had the voice or single sideband operators in one building, and the code guys in another building, and we tried to separate the antennas. So if we wanted to operate, let's say at night, on 40 meters sideband and CW simultaneously, we tried to use two antennas that were physically far enough apart so we wouldn't desense each other's receivers, because being so close in frequency. And it worked out pretty well sometimes. We did have some problems on some other bands, but it worked out very well. And we had another vertical that was down on the beach. And by the way, when I say on the beach was 350, 400 feet from where we operated. And there was actually a dirt road that ran between us and the beach. So we actually had a guy, one of the locals there that we hired, and he kind of helped us do a lot of grunt work. And he dug a trench across the road, and we buried our cables under the road so that the vehicles traveling up and down the road would not damage. And we actually had coax at 350 feet of coax or so going out to these antennas that we had over there. We had a second vertical. We call it the Battle Creek Special. It's made by a group of hams in Battle Creek, Michigan, and it's a 3-band antenna. And you actually have to send a control cable. It has a control cable that goes to it. And whenever you kick one relay in, it's on 80 meters. When you kick another relay in, it's on 40 meters. And if you have no relay at all, then it's on 160 meters. So we had a third antenna, a second vertical on the beach that we used, but it was separated from the other vertical by, I guess, 300 or 400 feet. We had some long runs of coax, but the losses of coax at that frequency, they're intensive a dB, so you don't really worry about running long runs of coax at 3 megahertz or 7 megahertz or 1.8 megahertz.
Wow. Okay, well, so back to the logistics. How do you get involved with a group that does a de-exposition? A friend of mine, you probably know him, Mark Stennett. Not too long ago.
Mark's on Wake Island right now. He's actually on Wake Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he had gone to American Samoa a year or two ago.
Yeah.
To maybe to Swains Island. I forget exactly.
Yeah, it was Swains. It was Swains that he was on. Yeah. Yeah. There's a group. It's operating right now on Wake Island. Yeah. They had to get special. Wake Island is an Air Force base, and a lot of super secret crap goes on there. So they had to get all kinds of permission, and they were supposed to go about a month ago, but the government shutdown messed them up. And they had to reschedule, and they're over there right now. I've contacted them on several bands. In fact, I talked to Stennett. I guess it was day before yesterday. I worked him, and he was the operator because he said hello and said, "This is Mark."
How do you guys get together? Is it the same group of guys lots of times to go? How do you decide where to go? How much does this cost you to do this individually, to chip in, to travel somewhere and carry all this stuff and freight and hiring cook and local labor? It just seems like it seems like an expensive hobby, no matter how much you love it.
It's expensive, but there's a lot of enjoyment. You remember a couple of years ago, because we talked about it on a previous episode, about the Midway Island expedition I was on, and a lot of the same guys that went on that Midway expedition or on Wake or went with me to Mozambique. There's a core group of this particular group. There's probably 30 or 35 hams that participate in the expeditions that I've been in, and there's a couple of the guys that kind of head it up and do a lot of the logistics. One of the guys lives up in Massachusetts, and his forte is shipping logistics, and so he handles a lot of international shipping for clients, and so he knows how to get things shipped from say JFK to Johannesburg, South Africa, where we could pick it up and pick it up and put it on a trailer and take it to Mozambique. And there's this magic thing, and I don't know anything about it. Perhaps you've heard of it. It's called a carnet, CARNET. Okay.
Heard of it.
He knows all about that, and how to use those things to be able to take things out of the country, enter another country, take them back out of the country, and bring them back to the original country without having to pay a bunch of fees and import duties and whatnot.
Manufacturers like Telos and every broadcast manufacturer that goes and shows at exhibitions outside the country, like IBC in Amsterdam or in Singapore, when we go to Broadcast Asia, wherever we go, we ship the stuff there on a carnet, and basically it's a bond. It's an internationally agreed to by most countries bond that says here's what we're bringing in, and we promise we're going to bring it all back out. Nothing's going to stay, nothing's going to get sold. We're not illegally importing anything. It's all going back out, and some bond money is put up, and that kind of thing. So that's what a carnet is. Yeah. So you use that same legal instrument to get ham radio gear in and out of countries that otherwise may want to charge you lots of import fees on it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's exactly how we did it. And Don, the guy up in Massachusetts, he does that for a living. I mean, he sends road graders to to Abu Dhabi or somewhere. I mean, he does all kinds of international shipping. So he's not only a ham operator, but he knows how to take care of the shipping. And then everybody chips in a little money. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, based on where you're going. Now, the guys that are on Wake Island right now, they had quite a ticket because they had to buy airline seats on a MATS flight that went from Hickam Air Force Base to Wake, and it was a 757 aircraft, and so they had to pay for that. And I'm thinking, based on what we had to pay to go to Midway, I bet that airline ticket was probably $3,000 just to go to and from Wake, from Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. And then of course you got to buy your ticket from the States to Hawaii. And you add that on there, and you've got. I would imagine that the guys that are on Wake right now probably are spending about $10,000 a piece. To do what they're doing. And luckily this one to Mozambique was not as expensive. The major cost was an airline ticket from Panama City, Florida to Johannesburg, and that was about $2,000. And then there was probably another $1,500 to $2,000 in cost. Some of that was for the de-expedition expenses, but I had to get a visa. U.S. citizens have to have a visa to go to Mozambique. That was $80, but then you had FedEx to and from the Mozambique embassy.
Yeah.
And then we had to have all these shots, and I think I probably spent $300 on shots and malaria pills and things like that. So, it can get to be expensive. But it's up there. You got to look at the other side of it. It was a hell of a good time. I mean, we had a great time. As far as being able to put Mozambique on the air for the hams all over the world, because there aren't any hams in Mozambique.
Oh, really? So that makes it all more desirable to be there and make contact.
It's a fairly rare country. So there's people.
What do you need for licensing to operate from Mozambique?
I have the license. I wish it's in the house, but I'm in my man cave out here. But I actually have a Mozambique ham license, and it's a little card with a seal of the PTT on it and a big stamp on it, and then my call sign, which was C92A, Charlie 92 Alpha, which was every operator that went there got an individual license with a call sign, and then we had the overall call sign that we used when we were on the de-expedition, which was C82DX. C9 and C8 are the prefixes used in Mozambique for all communications, just like we use W and K here in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the ones that the ITU has assigned to Mozambique.
So even a country like Mozambique has a communications department, which has people that are at least somewhat qualified to understand, radio frequency allocations and set up rules and issue licenses, huh?
Oh yeah. They have a PTT, and it's called a frequency spectrum management, something like that. I forget what the Department of Frequency Spectrum Management or Frequency Management or something like that. But there a lot of broadcast stations there, and a lot of television there, and of course cellular telephone. This is what I was talking about earlier, Kirk. It is amazing. There are two carriers. There's Vodacom and M-Cell, and they advertise. Every other billboard is a cellular billboard. They have children walking around with M-Cell vest on, and you can buy time, little cards that you can for blocks of time to use on your phone. You can buy it everywhere, and you can, it's amazing the amount of competition that they have there for cellular. But people may not have enough to eat, like I said, but they're damn sure going to have a cell phone. It's amazing there. I can't figure that out, but there's a lot of RF floating around. I mean, when we were on the highway between Maputo, which is the capital city, and Shasha, there was microwave antennas every 20 miles with, cell sites and microwave backbone and all over the place. It's a lot of communications there.
Wow. Hey, we're doing This Week in Radio Tech. It's a War Stories episode with our guest, Charlie Wooten. Charlie's the Director of Engineering for Clear Channel in Panama City, Florida. And he's also a world-renowned ham radio operator. And by world-renowned, he actually goes around the world to different places. We're talking about ham radio. We're going to talk about whatever Charlie's doing in broadcast radio, too, because, he posts on Facebook, this died today, I got to fix this and that. So there's things going on in broadcast radio, too. This is a War Stories episode. We talk about what's going on in the trenches. And if we haven't put him to sleep yet, I guess he isn't, Chris Tobin is with us as well. Hey, Chris, you still around?
I'm still here and enjoying every bit that Charlie has to say. That's really good.
Okay. I'm
enjoying it.
Hey, our sponsor for This Week in Radio Tech this week is my employer, Telos Systems. And I want to give you a little comparison here. Here is a Telos switch console. You've probably seen this in radio stations all over the world. I certainly have. From Asia to India to Europe to Africa to South America, Central America, and here in the U.S. and even in Hawaii and Canada and Alaska too. Seen these switch consoles. They've been around a long, long time, and we still make them. We still service them. We still sell them. It's a controller for a multi-line phone system, and at the moment, it's the 1X6 multi-line phone system that this controls. Here's a 1X6 right here behind me. It's 6 POTS lines and 1 hybrid. But let me compare that with a newer phone controller. Now, this is a 12-line controller. It's also available in a 6-line version and a 1-line version, too, if you just need that. But this is a Telos VSET 12. And it's quite different from the 1X6. It's got these beautiful color VGA displays. They show caller ID. They let you set up the whole thing. They can show you the listener caller lines. You can divide up a show to have hotlines if you want, guest lines and such. You've got options like busy all, screened hold. You have all kinds of options to make that, to make your shows easy and convenient and run very well. Also, it's powered over PoE, power over Ethernet. So it's a worldwide standard in how to power gear. It works with a phone system like our HX6 and our VX phone system. And the VX is right here. The VX is a multi-studio, multi-line, SIP-based voice-over IP multi-studio talk show system. So you can put lots of studios on the air and have them all come in over SIP. We also have in the rack here an HX1. This is a single-line POTS, ordinary analog phone hybrid, very useful for newsrooms, for podcasters to do an interview with somebody on the phone. It's also available in a double version called the HX2, and a lot of folks put those in a rack room, so they have a couple of hybrids right there. You can also use those for a talk show if you're just going to do a 2-line talk show. Our NX12, this is a 12-line hybrid talk show system. It's got 4 hybrids in it, and it will speak live wire if you need it to. It also has on the back either analog or AES inputs and outputs on XLR connectors. So it's a great hybrid to use if you just need one studio, or you can split it for 2 studios of talk show system there. Hey, also in the rack, I've got a Telos Pro Stream. This is what Andrew Zarian, the GFQ network, used. If you listen to their live audio feed, you're hearing a Telos Pro Stream. It's got Omnia audio processing in it, and then streaming and coding by Telos with all the popular codecs for streaming audio. Also in the rack here, I've got, what a stalwart. This is the Telos Extreme. And you know what? Even though ISDN in a lot of places is going away, we're still shipping a bunch of these. People are buying these all over the world still to conduct ISDN or communications over V.35 or X21. It also does do IP. Now, it's kind of limited. It's very basic IP streaming. But the Telos Extreme, we still make them. Between the Zephyr, its predecessor, and the Extreme, these things have been around for over 20 years now. So the ISDN codec. So if you want to check out Telos for talk shows, for audio streaming, for codecs, for content contribution or distribution, check us out on the web at telos-systems.com. telos-systems.com. And on the website, you can sign up for, where did I put it? Oh, it's here under the Chromebook. You can sign up. We'll send you a catalog, one of these right here. We'll send you a catalog. And if you want to subscribe to our e-news, it's very unobtrusive, comes out about once a month, and always chock full of engineering information and a little bit of updates about the company and products and such. Also, a quick announcement. I want to congratulate our linear acoustic division and Tim Carroll, who's our chief technology officer, won another Emmy. Now they've got 5 of them, and they got to build a bigger case for them. They won a technical Emmy for linear acoustics work on the Olympics that went on in London. So congratulations to Tim Carroll. So our show brought to you by Telos Systems, and I thank them very much for their sponsorship of This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode number 190, War Stories. We're talking with Charlie Wooten, and also with us is Chris Tobin. All right, let's see if we got a war story. Let's see if we can pull a war story out of Charlie Wooten. Charlie, what's been going on in broadcasting that you got your hands dirty and had to fix something?
Well, I had a little situation here while I was gone to Mozambique. We were riding down the highway in Mozambique, and my phone rings, and it's one of my transmitter sites. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's 9 o'clock in the morning in Mozambique. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning here. And for some reason, one of my transmitters decided to dump off. It might have been a power bump or something, but it called me. And we were headed from Mozambique back to South Africa. And I punched up on my iPhone, got the keypad going, and I brought the transmitter right back up without even, while we were riding down the road in Mozambique. So that, there's a broadcast in Mozambique story together. You were just talking about ISDN. We're still ISDN is still alive and well here, Kirk. We're lucky. We're in Old Bell South here, which is now AT&T, and we're still using ISDN here. I just had the BBC here a month ago. They did an interview with someone and came into that, called and asked if they could come to the studio and do a session with us. We do a session with the BBC 3 or 4 times a year. Different people are here on vacation, and they run them down here, and they're still using a lot of ISDN. And
now, is your ISDN costing you about the same as it always has? I just heard another story of somebody that says, "Hey, we used to pay $90 a month, and now we're paying $360 a month for the same."
No,
thing.
Ours is still running about 80. I think it's about $85 a month.
Wow.
It went up one time when we first put them in, 10 years ago. They were about $62, I think. But right now it's running about $85 a month. It hasn't gone up.
I wonder how they can be so much disparity there. In fact, it was this morning. I was talking to a broadcast engineer at the Ohio Association of Broadcasters meeting in Columbus, and they were telling me, it's like $360 a month now for what we used to pay under. And in Tennessee, I don't know. I haven't had ISDN at the house for a while now, but in Tennessee it used to be really cheap because
I guess different states have different tariffs, and
sure.
We're lucky here. But I've got an Extreme, and then I've still got 2 Zephyrs that we use all the time.
And they won't die, will they? Doggone it, we can't.
No, they won't die. In fact, it's funny. I do have one that got hit by lightning, and it's a perfectly nice, pretty cabinet and everything, but it won't do anything. That I've had. I can't throw it away. I just can't bring myself to throw it away. We had to buy a new one, but that was 8 or 9 years ago, and I just can't bring myself to throw it away. It's still in a Telos box sitting in my closet in my office. I just can't bring myself to throw it away because it can't be repaired. But anyhow, I did have a.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned lightning, and I got to believe that there in the Panhandle of Florida, you do deal with lightning. Whenever I've been there, it seems like there's a thunderstorm every afternoon, and there's lightning involved with it.
Yeah, Florida. Florida's one of the has more lightning hits than most states. Especially now, there's a little belt area that runs from Tampa through Orlando over to really right over toward Cape Canaveral, and that's where they really get it. But Florida in general is probably. I think I've heard that it's there's as many lightning hits here as anywhere in the United States over the course of the year. And you can set your watch every afternoon, 2:30, 3 o'clock, about 20 miles inland. We have what we call the sea breeze thunder showers, and we'll get. It'll be perfectly sunny in Panama City, but my tower for two of my big 100,000 watt FMs is inland about 26 or 27 miles, and they'll kick off for a second, come right back on with a power bump, and people say, well, what's it doing that for? I said, it's lightning up there, power's bumping, and I'll bring up my app on my iPhone and show them the radar, and it'll be all red and everything around where the tower is, and it'll be perfectly sunny 30 miles away. So that's just that's Florida weather. Sure. Yeah.
So what have you learned about? Do you have some rules of thumb about lightning protection or lightning avoidance?
I have learned one thing, and I'm sure Chris has run into this. Of course, we have very sandy soil here, and if you look at the AM ground conductivity for the Florida Panhandle, the only place that's worse is around Stone Mountain, Georgia, up around Atlanta, or Tallahassee is actually worse than Panama City, but it's next to nothing for ground conductivity. So it's really hard to get. You really can't get a good, you can't get a 1 or 2 ohm ground here. It's going to be somewhere around 8 to 10 ohms if you really try really, really hard. That's as good as you can get. And I know, Chris, you could probably do better than that. 30 stories up in a skyscraper in Newark, can't you?
Absolutely. We've done much better with the AM towers in the Meadowlands as well.
Oh yeah. Well, in the Meadowlands, you would have, that's just a marshy area, right?
Yeah, so the only problem you have there is you got about a dozen towers and lightning rods all sticking up in the ground, so they attract a lot of things.
Yeah, but we have a hard time getting a good ground, and we've actually had situations here, Kurt, you may have heard of this, where if you have a good stroke, your ground rods actually. There's so much heat around the ground rods that it melts the sand in glass and actually makes your ground rod an insulator sticking in.
I've heard of that. Is that true?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Absolutely.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Hey.
It'll just be coated. It'd be like a porcelain, well, it won't be porcelain, but it's the same, porcelain coated steel. It's the same thing. You have a copper ground rod, and it'll be coated with glass, but from the sand.
So I used to have 10 ohms to ground, and now I have 10,000 ohms to ground.
Yeah. Well, I had a situation where I had 10 ohms here when we did some remodeling in 1998. We had a ground system put in, and we got 10 ohms, and we were very happy with that. And over a period of time, about I guess 6 or 7 years later, we got the hell knocked out of us one morning about 8:30, and I had the electrician who put in the system come out, and he measured it. It was 150 ohms. It had gone up to 150 ohms, and so we had to completely drive new rods, do all the CAD welding, and we were able to get it back down where it was before. And knock on wood, it's still holding today.
Hey, for our listeners who are still learning about this stuff, we've been talking about 1 ohm, 8 ohms, 150 ohms. So what's the significance of having this extremely low resistance path to ground when lightning strikes? What happens when you have 150 ohms to ground when lightning strikes a tower?
Well, think about it think about this. You got a power supply. And you hook a resistor. One end of the resistor is ground, and one end of the resistor is connected to the power supply. You're going to have a voltage across that resistor. And if it's not all the way to ground, if you put another 100 ohms below on a second resistor to ground from the first resistor, your current is not. Your voltage and your current's it's got to go somewhere, and it's going to go in your equipment. It's going to find another place to go because you want to be able to soak that charge up and you don't want it going anywhere else but straight to ground. But if you give it any resistance, it's going to find another path.
It's going to find another path. Okay, yeah. So you've got a very low resistance and impedance because our lightning is RF too.
Yeah,
if this can go to ground easily, then your equipment can sit there and just watch it go by to ground and not be terribly affected. But if that path to ground has some resistance or even some impedance, then the lightning's going to say, you know what, that equipment looks pretty good right now too. And a portion of the lightning strike will go into your equipment at that point.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's one of the weather things that we have, that we have to deal with here in Florida. The other thing's hurricanes. And those come up from time to time. We've been pretty lucky here the last couple of years. Again, knock on wood. We haven't had any hurricanes come to this area, but it can be a real problem. We've had hurricanes come through Panama City. The last one was Opal, which was a Category 3, and did a lot of damage. Brought down a 400-foot broadcast tower that had 3 FM stations on it, and made a lot of money off of that one. But because we had to put up all kinds of emergency antennas, had to have a bunch of 1 kilowatt transmitters brought in by hot truck, and ERI had to furnish us a bunch of antennas in a hurry, and that can be a real war right there. Talking about war stories, hurricanes can be a completely. You could do a whole show on hurricanes. I'm sure.
Well, we did some on Sandy and
Superstorm Sandy. I'm sure that Chris could talk about Sandy a lot.
Yeah, Chris did some heroics himself after Sandy came through. Chris?
My heroics. I was stuck in San Francisco during the hurricane.
You were? Okay. Well, you had a lot of info about cell phone coverage and what worked and what didn't, and where the power was off in Manhattan. And then we talked to the guys from Greater Media who were. They had one station on one side of the eye, another station on the other side of the eye, as it came right on shore.
When I got back to the city. Cell service. It was the most eerie feeling one could have. If you can imagine, the image of New York City at night. It's well lit anywhere you go in the Manhattan or the boroughs, and then the evenings would come because of that substation explosion on the Lower West Side. Lower Manhattan was basically dark, and it was the most eerie feeling to walk along Houston Street or Varick Street or Hudson, and no street lights, no traffic lights, no motor traffic. Maybe 1 or 2 persons walking around, and all you heard in the background was the whirring sound of small generators powering lamps in a restaurant or powering pumps at the subway entrances, pulling water out. That's it. So it was pitch black in downtown Manhattan, and then during the day you could walk along those same streets and it's just empty. So if you ever saw the movie with Will Smith, I Am Legend.
Yes.
Which they filmed portions of that near my old studios when I was working in Uptown Manhattan on 7th Avenue. So it was pretty funny watching them film it and then watch the movie a year later. But it was sort of like that. Lower Manhattan, below Houston Street, basically, Canal Street, was just empty. Again, a couple of cars here and there, a couple of folks walking around, but nothing else. I mean, literally. And then if you get to 6th Avenue and Houston and you look north, you can see straight up the avenue, and then you could see literally traffic lights starting, cars, people going back and forth, left to right, east to west, so to speak, north and south, but everything below just blank, dead, no traffic, nothing. It was fascinating. It was an experience I don't think I'll ever capture again. But that's my best story on that one.
By the way, we had some talk about Verizon and their big wiring vaults and tunnels and things. Has all of that been rebuilt, or parts of it, or the most important parts?
Most of it has been rebuilt. There are still some buildings in Lower Manhattan, just east of the financial district, still have pumps. There are still generators running, pumps running, and electrical vaults being rewired with fiber. Verizon is still pulling out copper and placing fiber in its place, putting fiber in. It's still going on, but it's fascinating. Some of the pictures that I saw, I'm not sure if you probably see them on the internet now, but some of the phone vaults, the telecom vaults that I saw, some that I've been in over the years, it's just unbelievable how the brine of the water just destroyed everything. It's just, it's just fascinating when you see it. And those of us who dabble in electrical and electronics and know the outcome of water and electricity just don't go together. Just imagine submersing, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 huge cables of 300 pair wires, just, salt water, done. It just totally destroyed.
Oh, man. Yeah, Charlie, go ahead.
It's fascinating.
I was going to tell you one more not well publicized war story regarding hurricanes. There was a hurricane called Dennis that went into Pensacola, but we had some pretty good winds here. We had 70-mile-an-hour winds, and we were under a hurricane warning. And one of my stations, WPAP, which is on 92.5, is the LP1, the EAS LP1 station. And I had been up to that transmitter site at about 3 o'clock in the morning because I went ahead and just put the site on the generator because we kept getting power line hits. So I went up there and just manually transferred to the generator and told the controller not to transfer back. And I came back to the house and changed clothes because it was blowing rain. And I was on my way to the studio, and I noticed that WPAP sounded strange. There was something about the signal; it was cutting in and out or something, and I couldn't figure it out. And I got to the studio, and it seemed like the more I went in that direction, the more interference there seemed to be on the station. And so about the time I got to the studio, my son called me on the cell phone. He said, "Dad, there's something wrong with WPAP." And I said, "Yeah, I'm noticing that." And I started checking, and we had a competitor who had cranked up a 1 kilowatt frequency agile transmitter. I say the competitor did, an employee of the competitor did, on 92.5 with an unmodulated carrier with a stereo pilot. Huh. And I DF'd it. It took me a few minutes to get together the equipment to DF it, but I went and DF'd it. I found
direction fine. So you triangulated where the transmission was coming from.
I found out where it was coming from. I pulled over, and I called my regional engineer for Clear Channel. And I can't give you the exact expletives that were used in that conversation. But, I said, "You're not going to believe what I just found." And of course he said, "You got to be kidding me." That's not exactly what he said. And I said, is it okay for me to call the sheriff's department and have them come? I know somebody at the sheriff's department, and have them come with me, and we go to that building and have that turned off. He says, "Sure." So I called my general manager and let them know about it. And we had to go get the sheriff. I called a friend of mine who's at the sheriff's department. I was born and raised here in Panama City, so I know a lot of people. And so I called, and we got deputy to come out and knocked on the door. This particular person came to the door. He was the only one there, and said, "We'd like to look in your rack room." And he said, "Sure." So we went back there, and there's this P-Tech 1 kilowatt frequency agile transmitter, which they use for a backup, I guess. And they had a 4-bay antenna up about 100 feet on their studio tower. And there it was, cranking out 1,000 watts on 92.5, just an unmodulated carrier with stereo pilot. And not unmodulated, but only modulated with the stereo pilot. And sure. And so I said to the deputy, I said, "So do you mind telling me what you see on this readout?" It was an orange display. I said, "Does it say 92.5? "Yes, sir, it says 92.5. Can you remember that? So if you have to answer that in a court of law and in a deposition, you can do so." He said, "Sure." Okay. So I asked the guy if I could turn off his transmitter, and of course I did. And a few expletives later, I left the building, and so that was a strange situation there.
I take it that this employee was being malicious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
he wasn't. Was he just smart enough to fiddle around and put it on 92.5 and turn it on to see what mischief he could cause?
I really don't know. All I know is the guy got fired. He had been around for a while. This particular person had been around. He was not a youngster by no means. He was probably 40-ish and had been in broadcasting for quite a while. And so he probably knew his way, knew enough to be dangerous, and he knew enough. I guess they probably had a procedure there of how to. They had 4 radio stations in this particular group, and
so they would need to tune it around the different ones.
I'm sure they had a procedure. You know, you do this and you do this and put it on this frequency and so on. So anyhow, that did happen. That's a war story.
But you don't put it on your competitor's frequency and turn it on.
You don't. Well, it was the problem was we had 70-mile-an-hour winds. I had better things to do than to DF this problem. You know, this was at the height of the storm is when all this was going on, and we were trying. There were roads closed. There were power lines down. There were trees down. There was the bridge going to the beach was closed because anytime the wind gets over 55 miles an hour, they close this bridge because it's a high-rise bridge, and so you can't go from Panama City to Panama City Beach except under extreme emergencies. And we were in the storm. This was during the height of the storm when all this was going on, and I had better things to do than to be DFing some idiot who decided to put a carrier on on the LP1 station, which was carrying weather bulletins for everybody to rebroadcast. So, and from the state EOC, where we have a VSAT that's connected to the state EOC, and that's how they get the information out to the broadcasters. Is the LP1 broadcast it, and then they trigger the other stations. Sure. But so anyhow, that was an interesting situation.
Well, it sounds like you dealt with it. What made you decide that the way you need to handle this is to bring the sheriff in, just so you could have backup? In terms of if it ever went to court later, you would have somebody to say, "This is what I saw Charlie do. This is what the problem was."
I wanted to have a witness that would be
a witness. That's what
a third party witness that was not affiliated with either Clear Channel or with the competitor. This was a third party, and so if he was ever deposed, he would be able to confirm what he saw on that panel. And it was just a bad situation. But
well, sounds like you handled it appropriately, and I'm glad you had the connections that you did, and a good reputation in the town and with the sheriff's department, so that they would cooperate easily. I mean, they wouldn't just probably have done that for anybody. They know you're a stand-up guy, and you wouldn't call them.
We do a lot of stuff with the sheriff's department on the air. Where they do a lot of things with the youth and whatnot, and they have rodeo. The sheriff's rodeo, I think, was either last weekend or is coming up this weekend. But that we do a lot of things with the sheriff's department, and so it was just a good situation to be able to call them, and they came. I mean, they were literally there in less than 5 minutes, and they had a lot of things going on that morning with road closures and whatnot, and tornado. And we did have a tornado right down the road from where this happened too. Within an hour or so of this happening, so it was just a bad situation. The guy was really stupid doing it.
Wow. Well, stupidity abounds. It's everywhere.
It does. It really does. Yeah.
Hey, we're kind of out of time. Charlie Wooten, I really appreciate you joining us for this War Stories episode and telling us about Mozambique and ham radio from there and what you went through, and then a couple of stories of broadcast daring do and getting things fixed. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it. I really did. Even on short notice, it just happened to work out good for me tonight. I was happy to be able to fill in for. I guess Chris Tarr was away tonight.
Yeah. So, I'm glad you can make it. And Chris Tobin, Charlie's a good storyteller. I got a few words in. I'm sorry you hardly got any words in edgewise, but thanks for joining us as well. Chris Tobin, did you have any last minute things you wanted to tell us?
No. Charlie's stories of Mozambique were great. I know a lot of friends of mine who are hams, and as I'm a ham operator, so hearing that kind of stuff is exciting, and also is part of the craft that keeps us going, and even the broadcast side with the tinkering and having fun. Yep,
it sure does. I'm stalling for a minute here to see. I seems like I've got something planned for next week, but I don't know if it's on my calendar yet. I think we've got I think we've got a guest next week, but I'm not sure who it is. So I guess I can't tell you who it is. 'Cause I'm not sure who. We do this War Stories thing once every 10 episodes. We try to bring a seasoned engineer in here to, besides ourselves, to give us some stories and some learning opportunities to find out, what to do. And so, hey, if somebody starts transmitting on your frequency and messing up with you, go get the sheriff. There you go. Go get the sheriff. Charlie, if folks want to find you and follow you or know about your ham activities, how would people who are interested in Charlie Wooten, find out what you're doing?
Well, I'm on Facebook, as you know.
Yep.
I don't even know. Actually, I think it's Charles Wooten or something, but I'll look on the handy iPhone here. But I think that's what it is Charles Wooten. But I put a lot of stuff up there about ham radio, and of course, deer season. Deer season is coming up, Kirk, and that's one of my favorite vices. So you'll be seeing a lot of pictures of food from the camp instead of food from restaurants, and maybe a couple of pictures of some dead deer, I hope.
Indeed. On Facebook, you are Charles Wooten. So if you're interested in following Charles, you can make friends with him or be a fan or something like that. And Charles, what's your ham call?
It's NF4A, November Fox 4 Alpha.
November Fox 4 Alpha. So if you are a ham, you know where to look call signs up. You can look up Charlie that way, and of course make contact with him on the airwaves. If there's a contest going on, you're pretty sure that November Fox 4 Alpha is going to be on the air somewhere.
I do a lot of contesting. Those are the two things I do: are DX and contesting in ham radio. I don't do a lot of the 2-meter handy talkie type stuff, but I do enjoy contesting and DXing.
Well, good deal. Charles, thanks for being with us. I appreciate it. And Chris Tobin, thanks for being with us, too. I appreciate you being here. You've been watching This Week in Radio Tech War Stories, episode 190, brought to you by Telos Systems on the web at telos-systems.com. Makers of fine telephone hybrids and SIP multi-studio talk show systems and POTS and ISDN talk show systems, as well as IP codecs and ISDN codecs and streaming equipment too, streaming encoders. Check them out on the web, telos-systems.com. That's it for This Week in Radio Tech. Thanks to Andrew Zarian at the GFQ Network. Well, you'll find lots of shows to watch. Go to gfqnetwork.com, find our show, subscribe to other shows. You'll enjoy it all. And thanks to Andrew Zarian. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.
That's all the bandwidth we can pilfer this week. Another twit has propagated, and all the transmitters and audio equipment live happily ever after, thanks to the handsome engineer and his kind, benevolent care. We'll be back next week.
Lord willing and the creek don't rise.
This Week in Radio Tech. Subscribe to iTunes and you'll never miss a show. Search for This Week in Radio Tech in the iTunes Store. Soliciting is strictly encouraged. If you like today's show, tell a friend. If you didn't like it, we were never here. Kirk Harnack's wardrobe provided by the Salvation Army and the Red Cross Disaster Relief Services. Hair and makeup provided by Penelope Garcia Hernandez Weinberg.
He's unique, wouldn't you say?
I just want to get it over with.
This ends this transmission. Tango, Whiskey, India, Romeo, Tango. Signing off. Okay.